Let me also begin by first thanking the OECD for taking the lead indeed on thinking on new approaches to economic challenges. Let me also thank Mathilde Mesnaar, who invited me some time ago to give a presentation in the context of this NAAC initiative here at the OECD, and at that presentation, say the idea of having a workshop like we have today and tomorrow was more or less generated, was born at that stage. It was at a time that I had just started GlocalNet, the social complexity and uncertainty network, which among other things would like to promote the awareness of the importance of social complexity and uncertainty. I'm happy that the idea was taken forward to have a conference like this, and that INET and the European Commission joined us in organizing this event. Let me also thank already now Noé van Hulst from the Dutch delegation, who was so kind to offer tonight to have some drinks together. So we have food for thought today and drinks later today. And let me also thank him and my own university for allowing GlocalNet to make a video of all the presentations here today and of the panel discussions. Now to the substance. The title of this introductory session is "Why Does Complexity Matter?" And it's a nice question. It's a question that I asked some time ago in a little bit different format to Andy Haldane, who was already mentioned. And I think he answered it in the way that I think you should answer it. How could complexity not matter if you are looking at an economy? Because the economy, and Eric made a point as well, you don't have to overdo it and stress it again, because the economy is, of course, and society is a complex adaptive system developing itself towards an uncertain future. And any, let's say, theory that would like to understand the real world should take that as a starting point. And because an economy, a society, consists of millions, billions individuals, economic agents who interact with each other by exchanging information, knowledge, goods and services, and money. And here the very close relation between money and understanding an economy almost immediately becomes clear. Because money and finance are, let's say, institutions, are means that people have stumbled upon to deal with the inherent complexity of an economy and of a society. So it means that you cannot understand an economy without thinking about it as a monetary economy. Modern economies are monetary economies. So it means you have to take complexity and uncertainty as the starting point for understanding the economy. That's very straightforward. Then the question is, what can we learn from complexity science? And I think one thing is, and it was also already mentioned, is that we can use the tools from complexity science, and Eric mentioned a whole list, to better understand phenomena that sometimes cannot even be described, let alone analyzed, with more traditional tools, emergent phenomena, tipping points, the importance of history, path dependency, things like that in real life, in complex systems, you often find power law distributions rather than the normal distributions, and so on. But I don't think that is enough, and that's where we should more or less stop. I think that, and I believe that, really taking seriously the complexity of the economy and the uncertainty of the future means that we need an alternative paradigm for the social sciences, and of course economic being one of the social sciences. And an alternative paradigm means that we do not just introduce, let's say, tools, in this case from complexity science, however important I think they are, let me not be misunderstood. Just introduce those tools in an otherwise more or less unchanged paradigm of economics. But it means that we indeed have to rethink economics in its totality, as it were. And now the good news is that we don't have to start from scratch. There are all the contributions from what is now called complexity science that Eric described in his presentation. It's more or less started to flourish from the mid of the 1980s after the establishment of the Santa Fe Institute. But I think that's not the only component if we think about really an alternative paradigm. In economics, the idea of complexity was not first introduced, let's say, in the mid-80s. It's much older. If we go back to the 1930s, the Austrian School of Economics, it's people of Hayek and von Mises. They introduced in their economic thinking complexity already at that time. Did not explicitly at that time use the words of complexity, but later on they did. For instance, Hayek has done very important work in the 1960s, publishing articles like the theory of complex phenomena. So that's one other element, and I think the third element, which I think could be fruitfully combined with the complexity science tools and elements of Austrian economics, are what in economics are now called the post-Keynesian thinkers, which started from the original work of Keynes and the emphasis that Keynes in his original work put on the importance of what he called fundamental uncertainty. And I think if we bring these three strands of thinking together, there we have already quite a bit of a new paradigm. I would not claim that there is not further thinking to do. I think there is, on the contrary, a lot of further work to think about how to really build further and formulate this paradigm. But there is already enough to I think, also start to apply it to real-world policy problems. And you hinted at the field of financial markets, financial institutions, financial regulation. I think there are contributions from this new, let me call it, emerging paradigm which in a number of ways challenge, let's say, the current way of thinking about regulation and propose other solutions. Let me conclude by mentioning one example of, let's say, that another paradigm not just means introducing just new tools, and that's with respect to the, I think, in current economics and in current economic thinking, central concept, and that's the concept of equilibrium. And that concept was mentioned, I think, by everybody who spoke so far this morning. Equilibrium and then also disequilibrium. But it's part of one and the same concept. I think if you look from the new emerging paradigm, one of the more radical things that you will probably do is to not think about complex systems in terms of equilibrium or disequilibrium, but in terms of order. And the order concept is a very central concept in Austrian thinking, and is very different from equilibrium, because you can have an order without having a consistency of plans of all the individuals, which is the definition of equilibrium, and which is a very, I would almost say, provoking a little bit, an irrelevant concept to the real world. And order makes it possible to think about a structure of the world without having to assume that all plans are consistent and can be executed unchanged. Finally, I think thinking about complexity more in general terms of what it means for, let's say, the paradigm of the social sciences also allows us to broaden the topics and the issues we look at, because, and understandably so, there has been a lot of emphasis in by people trying to implement complexity thinking about understanding the financial crisis and trying to understand why a system can be unstable. Whereas I would argue that the far more fascinating thing to understand is, if you take a far longer horizon, how it can that such complex systems as economies have been developing themselves over the past 2 centuries, like they have, almost continuously growing. And if you use a long-term scale, the terms of real instability are very limited. And because of the recent huge instability, again, understandably so, we have focused very much on understanding why a system can be unstable. So I hope that these 2 days we can scratch a little bit again on thinking further about how we can apply and further develop a paradigm that looks at the economic system from a new perspective, which then can also help, indeed, and others to design policies, better policies for better lives. Thank you very much.